Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Filter. Today I always say this. I say every time I do an introduction for Behind the Filter, I'm always like, I have an awesome person or a special guest with me today. I'm like, but everybody is awesome and special.
True, yeah.
Yes.
Everybody is.
I know.
I love your attitude, and I get to be special too. I didn't expect that. This made my entire year.
There we go. I have the amazing Matt Bair with me today, who, if you are here in the Indianapolis area, you may recognize his voice.
Hello.
Because he does traffic for WIBC in the mornings and in the afternoons. And you've been there for ever.
Oh, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
It's a really good gig. I've been in some sort of capacity there for 15 years now, and it's cool. It's right there on Monument Circle with cars coming around. I have an excellent view, and so I'm really blessed. It's a good gig.
Awesome. And so I feel like I've always known of you just because I came from radio and TV, so always knew about you. But then we actually didn't really connect until I was over at Wish. And then you were the biggest help for me when I was doing traffic, because I was like, what am I doing? I'm doing all the things. I had retired from TV, and then all of a sudden I'm back in TV now. And I'm like, what do I do?
Yeah, hey, you helped me. So I guess the blind leading the blind is what it was. No, it was a lot of fun. And I first recognized you because you're so good on social, and you kind of had a Latina hip thing going on, dance that you're doing. I'm like, I've got to be friends with her. And it's just this is really cool. So yeah.
It's so funny. I on TikTok, I changed because obviously I'm kind of getting back into podcast news kind of my way now. And I just put I'm the untraditional reporter who dances, because I didn't know how else to categorize myself.
I think that's great.
Yeah?
I mean, that's untraditional reporter who dances.
Yeah.
You're getting your hips out there. You're talking. I'm sorry, I'm not fixated on that. You get that out there, and you say, hey, we're going to do some news. So I think that's fun.
Yeah.
That's good. And you can tell your stories, because I know you have a story to tell, too.
Oh, so, yeah. I have 5 million of them, it seems like. I always say I've lived 5 million lives. So there's that.
You too.
Yeah, I know. So I can't remember, have you always been here in Indy?
I came from a small town in Indiana. We started... I was born in northern Indiana. We moved to Missouri, Nebraska, and then we moved back to rural Indiana when I was starting high school.
Uh-huh.
So from there, I would say about 15 years, it's kind of a blur. 15 years ago, I moved to downtown Indianapolis, and I've been there for the majority of my life now. And it's cool. It's a good place. We have our problems, but it's joyous and diverse, and people are just fun. So
yeah,
it's cool.
Would you ever want to move anywhere else?
Oh, yeah.
What would be your first choice to move to?
Someplace that's not war-torn. Someplace that's warm.
Duh.
Yeah, right? Like Hawaii. I would love to live in Hawaii. I got to go to Hawaii a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I think that would be awesome. Pacific Northwest, Seattle.
Okay.
I think it'd be fun to live in the Bahamas, or even Puerto Rico, or
you would love
Costa. I know I would.
Uh-huh.
I heard there's a beach. And I love the beach.
5 million of them. They're awesome.
Yeah. Just pick one, right?
Yeah, exactly. Very cool. So what I really wanted to get into the topic of conversation was today is I feel like you just have an amazing story. When we both, sat and talked, and I really got to know your backstory on your sobriety and everything that you've gone through and your journey and everything. And so I thought that would be a really, really great topic for us to dig into, because one, we haven't touched that yet on Behind the Filter, and I've always wanted to, and I've always said from the beginning I wanted to have you on.
Sure.
But two, I think the way your story could resonate, and I feel does resonate with so many other people who either have been on the journey, have had friends who have been there and they've been alongside trying to figure out those things, or they've had bouts of that piece of their lives where they have moved forward from, or they're still struggling with it. And so I feel like your story can really, really benefit people. And because you also have, a podcast as well on WIBC, and that one is called
Supporting Sobriety.
Okay. So is that all, what are the topics that you talk about in terms of all that? 'Cause I feel like when you say that topic, you feel like maybe it can only go one direction, but I'm assuming there's so many different facets of that.
what we do is there's a lot of really good recovery out there. When I say recovery in this, I'm talking about alcohol and addiction recovery. So what we decided to do, my partner, Ryan Hedrick and I, Ryan's our morning anchor at WIBC, and we wanted to do a sobriety podcast. Me being a recovering alcoholic, him being a recovering addict. I'm actually both.
Mm-hmm.
But we wanted to have our own unique spin on it. So we decided to start speaking with the caregivers of the alcoholic and addict. I think of, my friends, my family, the people who had to sit through my worst bullshit through my life, the people that I really tormented through my alcohol abuse. Because with my family, and this is no fault of anybody's, with my family, before me, they didn't know much about addiction because they hadn't been exposed to it. We grew up in a small town. It was a middle class family in a small town. So we wanted to start talking to these guys, moms, dads. Ryan's married. He wanted to talk to his wife. So the caregivers, we wanted to start introducing these, well, I don't know, in some degree, some of these stigmas about addiction that people talk about, some of the words they use, like junkie and hooky and everything, and other addiction stigmas that lead into, prevent people from going into recovery.
Yeah.
So that's what we wanted to do, is we wanted to start speaking to somebody and start giving them knowledge they may not have, because I didn't know any of this when I first started. I thought Narcan, which is the drug that brings people out of an overdose from opiates, I thought you injected it. And it's a nasal spray. I'm like, there's no way no way in hell I could administer Narcan to anybody after OD. Turns out it was a nasal spray, but it's just a common misconception.
Yeah.
One of those things about addiction we just don't understand until you do. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of thing we talk about. We talk about Narcan. We talk about fentanyl, the worst drug crisis that's ever happened in my life. Yeah. I wouldn't have survived the fentanyl days, either Ryan or myself. We talk about that. It's in everything. I mean, it's just party drugs like Percocet and ecstasy, things that I used to take on the regular, Now they're laced with fentanyl. Now they can kill you in one dose. So
that's so scary.
And it is. It's a very long answer to a very good question, John. But in a sense, there is a lot that goes into it. As in, what do people do not know? Mm-hmm. What can we help them understand? Of course, always doing it with love, empathy, and hope. That's the trick. Because sometimes when you talk about this stuff, it doesn't feel hopeful. It feels really shitty.
Yeah.
It feels like it's a losing battle every single day, because that's what we run on the news. This person OD'd, or there was a domestic dispute that ended in violence because of this person, and they were high as a kite. And those are the things we hear, and that's how the stigma of addiction with junkie gets started.
Yeah.
So it's worthy. We don't get paid for it. We're not making any money. We're doing it right now out of the joy of sobriety. If you're sober, you got to give it away.
Yeah.
So it's good. But if we're on any podcast provider, like Supporting Sobriety, if you want to go to Apple or Spotify, whatever you guys listen to, you can hear our work and what we're doing. And there's something for anybody and any question in there through 50 episodes.
And I'll make sure I'll link everything, because with every episode, I like to put out a blog post and an email. So I'll make sure all your information is on there if people want to connect with you after this in terms of the podcast, or just connect with you on social media or anything like that. So in terms of your journey, was it something that kind of happened kind of slow progressively, or because sometimes when people, they hit a rough patch in life and then all of a sudden it kind of veers off course? How did your story start?
For me, I came from a culture of alcohol. Now, having said that, my family never drank like I did.
Okay.
But it was common, and not in a bad way, John. It's not like I'm disparaging. I mean, this is the most loving family you could possibly have. But when we get together, there's going to be drinking.
Yeah.
And serious drinking. I mean, we can put them back, and not just beer. I'm talking about hard alcohol. And I remember as a kid seeing my parents have these parties, and they invite the whole dinner, everybody be dressed up. And I'm like, this is cool. Everybody's laughing, and I've always loved to laugh. As a little kid, I thought I want to be, and it was just a combination of seeing it and wanting to do it. But also, as they say, alcoholism's a symptom of something. Mm-hmm. And with me, it was my own insecurities as a young man, as going through high school and not loving myself. And how it kind of got started is I had my first drunk when I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went to college, I went to Purdue University here in Indiana, and Katie barred the door. This was a candy store for a guy like me, because I wasn't leaving this small town to go get educated at Purdue. I was leaving because I wanted floor parties,
You wanted to party it up for college years.
and we found them. We found a lot of them. And so needless to say, I didn't last very long there, and I didn't get my degree. But from there, it was my 20s, and it was the same thing. I was drinking like crazy. And we're talking... by then, I would say in my 20s, I was getting popped really for about 3 or 4 nights a week, I'd say, on the regular, and then just, social drinking the other nights. I mean, that's just what I did.
Yeah.
It really got bad, I would say, in my mid-30s.
Okay.
For a while there, because I live in downtown Indianapolis, and I live close to where I work. All the things. I was riding a bike for the I loved my bike. I rode it for 10 years, and I rode it for 1 year entirely, and I remember it was a cold day. And I got done working that day. It was like 2 in the afternoon, a much different position than what I had now. And just going over to the liquor store, it's just right around the corner. We've got like 4 of them right there at work. And I went to one of them, and I bought a bottle of Apricot Kettle One. And I put it in my bag, and I'm like, dude, this might be an indicator that you have a problem. For the first time, it struck me that I might have a drinking problem, or I might be an alcoholic, because by then my hands would tremble a little bit. If I'd go 8 or 9 hours without drinking. It wasn't until like the 3 or 4 hours I'd later be accustomed to. But yeah, because think about it. I mean, think about our bad behavior sometimes when we're drinking. What do I say? The next day to people that I really pissed off, I say, well, that's just kind of me. You don't ever look at it and say I'm an alcoholic. I don't want to admit that. I don't want to admit that I have some sort of disease of addiction where I can't control what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I don't have that discipline, that I don't have that manhood. I don't want to admit that. Well, you got to admit it. You got to admit it, and that's what ended up happening.
Were you going to work?
I was coming home at that point.
But were you going to work eventually, like toast as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That came later. Eventually, I got the position I got now, and that's the traffic job. And I remember auditioning for it, and I wasn't even sober when I was auditioning for it. I was going in, I'd make tape, I'd practice.
Wow.
And just record all this tape. But that's what my body was accustomed to,
That's crazy. Because for me to even think about like doing any of this or being on TV, doing what I used to do and having anything in my system, I would not be able to do that. But your body just got used to it all.
Yeah. And that's so cool. And I'm happy for you. And I'm happy that that's not the action or the course you take. Yeah, your body gets used to it. I auditioned for this job that I have now, and I'd make all this tape, and I eventually got the job. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is going to be what I'm on now, a split shift. I work early in the morning, I work into the evening.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'm not thinking about how I'm going to curtail my drinking. I'm thinking about where I'm going to put my drinking.
Oh.
To be able to coordinate, my buzz and my shakes and everything else. It's bizarre. It is complete insanity.
That's crazy. So instead of you being like, I need to take a step back, you're like, wait, how can I still make this work while I do this?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was a hell of a way to live.
Yeah.
When it got really bad, I remember it was about 5-6 years ago where my hands were shaking so badly. And I switched over to vodka full time. There were no more craft beers or growlers or anything like that. It was bottles of vodka.
Wow.
And I remember my hands shaking so badly one day that I called a friend of mine. And we sat down, and I was self-conscious about my hands shaking, of course. So I'm trying to, this man is a sponsor in a 12-step program, okay? So I'm trying to hide my hand shaking from him, even though he totally gets it.
Totally knows what's going on.
This is how much you lie when you're in this stuff.
Wow.
This is
so you're thinking like anybody, you can lie to anybody still, you can try to lie to anybody still, and it doesn't really matter.
He looks over at me, and I'm saying, I think I've got a drinking problem. Still not willing to go past third base on this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, and I totally don't dig the expression, but he said, Matt, your hands are shaking like a whore in church. And I'm like,
oh my God.
well, this is an old school guy, you know. This was old, and I kind of look at him and I'm like, well, I guess they're shaking pretty badly right now. And then when the discussion continued, and that's when I went up to treatment my first time, and I checked out of it myself after 10 days, and I got drunk on the way home.
Wait, so you went through that whole like withdrawal process, which I bet was absolutely horrid, only to come out just to get back to where you were to make yourself feel better, I'm sure.
Correct. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of glad you brought this up because this could help people who are thinking about going into detox. Because you hear detox and it's not a good image. It's not something that sounds like you want to do, but it's actually the safest way to do it, especially if you're expunging your body of alcohol.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to be at the level that I was, handshaking, DTs, with the audio and visual, I've seen colors and everything when I wouldn't drink. The heartbeat, you know, you can go into cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it's almost likely if you just stop cold turkey and you were as far as long as I was. But I remember the first time I went into detox, drinking a bottle of vodka in the parking lot, eating Steak and Shake. And I go in, and even with all my drinking, my heart rate was still so high. They were like, we were so worried you weren't going to come back because I was talking to them on the phone. And they're like, yeah, you're in trouble. And the guy on the phone actually tells me I haven't talked about this forever. The guy on the phone, sorry, I'm kind of picking this up. It's like,
no,
he tells me on the phone, he says, make sure you don't stop drinking tonight. In other words, don't stop drinking so you don't die.
So you don't die.
Yeah, so you don't go into the DTs and cardiac arrest and all those awful things I just talked about. So I kept drinking through the night. And a lot of times when we're having our conversation, Johnny, I'm going to talk about drinking and driving, and I did it, and it's probably the thing that I'm least proud of, in my life. So there was a lot of that. I just want to put that out on the table. So yeah, I drove up there to the northeast side of Indy. I checked in. We did the detox thing. It was fantastic. The one thing when you do go into a rehabilitation or detox, you're going to be working with people and nurses that have also been addicts and alcoholics. It's common. And as a matter of fact, most of the ones I have. Fantastic people. I said, I'm cured. I'm done in 15 days. Check myself out because I'm going to moderate my drinking. I go out to my car. And at the time, I had just broken up with my girlfriend on New Year's Eve because I was drunk. Imagine that. I go to my phone, did not have a message from her over those 15 days. So I decided to get drunk on the way home. And that led to, I started with wine, and then because it's a progressive disease, it went right into vodka, right back into vodka. And next thing you know, I'm back with my buddy again. I'm like, I'm in trouble. I'm drunk again. And we would sober me up, and then I'd get drunk again. And this went on about 4 or 5 times until I finally, he had a place in Tennessee because he knows people down there in the rehabilitation industry. So I go down to Tennessee, and I check in there, and I have this awesome 30-day rehabilitation, John. It's such a spiritual place. I was like, everybody should come here. I was like, whether you're sober or you're drunk, whatever it is, it was such a magical place. And I came back and I had 9 months. And then one day I just picked up. And there were reasons for it, but I don't want to give those reasons because the bottom line is I just chose to drink. That's what it is.
Yeah.
You know, of course, especially 9 months, you're still going to have, at least for me, still have these cravings. But as this guy who became my first sponsor said, your first thought you're not responsible for, but your next action you are. It is so salient because at first I'd go by the liquor aisle at the grocery store and I'd be like, wow, that's a lot of liquor. And some of that looks pretty good. But then it's the second thought, to turn my attention away or to call somebody or to make that whatever I have to do to not buy that liquor. Even if it's just turning around, walking away, that's in play as well. So whatever that alcoholic at the time has to do. So that took some time, but eventually, this last one, you just eventually say, I've had enough. You just say, I'm done, I quit. And that's kind of what happened. I remember I was doing the radio, the traffic reporting. There were several times that I was caught drunk on the air. And
That's so crazy.
Yeah, there's still tape out there. I haven't heard it. I'm over 3.5 years sober, and I still can't listen to the tape. My executive producer says I called truckers a bunch of assholes.
Shut up.
Yeah, he says that. I said that. I disagree. I said I don't hear that. He says I can play the tape. I'm like, I believe you. As long as
Wait, you straight up went on air and said.
Yeah, well, according to him, I can't. I was drunk at the time. But yeah, that's what he said. And think about it. A lot of people are listening are driving a truck.
Yeah, like, I'm an asshole.
It was a very personal, disparaging message. And these guys didn't. They could probably tell something was wrong by now. Because I couldn't get anything out.
Oh my gosh.
This was like, it was 5:05. And I got pulled from the air that time, and then it was a few months later. I remember always saying when I go to work drunk, which was common at the end. And remember, as I tell you the story, I do still tell it with shame. There's nothing cool about it. I just want to remind everybody, because I'm telling it kind of in an upbeat way, but, it's just so everybody can hear. I used to say, the words will come. You'll figure out how to say it, and that worked until it didn't, It continued to work until, one day it was 3:00. It was a Monday. I was just feeling awful. Not hungover, just drunk sick. You know? Like if you don't get sick, you're just going to feel miserable.
Yeah.
So you're trying to make yourself sick. I know it's gory details here. You're trying to make yourself sick. You're trying to just give yourself a little reprieve of feeling better, not necessarily normal, because by now you're not that. By now the conversations, the lies to yourself have ended. There's a serious struggle going on here, but you don't give a damn. You still want that bottle.
Right.
I remember getting to work and sitting down. I did my first report. It was bad. It was really bad. I did my second report. It was even worse. And I just said, this is the day where the words don't come anymore. And I got up from my little studio. It's kind of in the back of a room where a lot of other people do radio and work. And I got up and I said goodbye to everybody. And I walked out to my boss and I said, hey, I'm leaving. And I won't tell you exactly how that conversation went. But I remember saying to him, you got to let me go.
Wow.
Just having that. And that was me. And it's still a tough thing for me to talk about because these people that my family, the people I work with, their patience with me, their tolerance with me and their love they've showed me. I mean, I just wouldn't be here. And from there, I got into my car. Remember, I'm drunk.
Yeah.
Okay, and I start driving home. And I pull up, there's this intersection, about 3:30 in the afternoon. I pull up to this intersection downtown. It's at Illinois and Ohio. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
It's from my parking garage. And I remember, it's a busy day. This is in the afternoon downtown Indianapolis, so their cars are everywhere. God only knows what everybody's doing. But I remember turning on my turn signal and just hearing that. Like there was just this void.
Yeah.
And it was just me just hearing the turn signal, getting ready to turn right. And I think to myself, in 12-step recovery, there's a text we read that talks about the bitter end.
Mm-hmm.
You either get into recovery, you stay in recovery, or go to the bitter end. And I actually thought to myself at the time, this is what the bitter end looks like.
Mm.
And I did some calculations in my head, how long I would be before I was homeless, how long I could drink before my body actually kicked out.
Mm-hmm.
I kid you not, I actually thought that I was a little sad that I wasn't going to see the Colts play next year. I really did. I said, man, because but this was a reoccurring thought with me, is these thoughts like, you're not going to be around to see this next thing. And I like the Colts. I mean, and I'm thinking to myself all these things, because I've resigned myself to the fact that, you're not going to get it. And I go home. And I go upstairs and I just start maiming this bottle. I mean, I just get it out of the back of my bag. It's where I always carried it. And I stopped using glasses. I stopped using drinks. I just started pulling the bottle, and there was a knock on my door. I opened the door, and it's the cops. Somebody from work had called the cops. And I invited them in because
what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? I wasn't hiding anything.
Right.
Now, my heart was going crazy at the time, my drunken little heart, because I'm thinking, okay, I did something on my way back here. I wasn't thinking about anybody I might have hurt. I was thinking about me, of course. That's what you do when you're an alcoholic. And it pretty much went like this. We're taking you with us. And we're going to take you to the hospital. And what had happened is they said you can either take an ambulance or you can go with us. I said, I'll go with you. So they cuffed me, put me in the back seat, and I rode to the hospital with them. And the cop talked to me for a little bit. And I was put on lockdown for 24 hours in the ICU, which means you can't leave the room. There's a glass thing for 24 hours. It's what they give you when you have a threat of harming yourself.
Okay.
And I'd been on this a couple of times before already, because there have been times I walked into the emergency room that just weren't pretty. But I remember trying sneaking out this time. I tried to pull the band off my wrist and sneaking out. Didn't work. Here's the bizarre thing, the thing that I just don't get over to this day, or how my thinking was working, or what I was thinking, because I really don't know. I remember I wanted to go back to work for some reason. I can't remember why. So I remember getting a cab and taking it halfway to the circle, then realizing I didn't have my bank card on me. So the guy drops me off halfway to the circle. It's like the windshield's like 10 below this time.
Gosh.
And I walk back to the Monument Circle, and I've been in the drunk tank before. I've been in detox before, and the thoughts going through your head are bad enough, like the anxiety and the misery and the self-deprecation and the shame, and this was it exponentially going on this walk. I just remember thinking about the whole thing. And here's what happens. I get back, my card still works, which I thought was bizarre because I just walked out on my job. And it's about 5 a.m., usually about an hour before I go on.
Yeah.
With our morning show host, Tony Katz, in the morning news. And I was just kind of sitting there, and it got closer to 6, and I just went and I started doing traffic. And nobody said anything for the first half hour. And then the second half hour started hitting, and started going through. My boss texted me, he said, "I'm so happy to hear your voice right now." And I don't know if I've ever felt like as such a spirit of redemption at that point. I don't even know if that's the proper phrasing I want to use, but I got a few text messages like that. In the morning, the guys that were working in the morning our time were like, "What the?" we thought they 86'd you, man. We thought you were out because they had heard about it yesterday.
Yeah.
It was a thing. I mean, it was a thing, and it was dramatic, and I made it look dramatic. And so the next day, it wasn't the next day, it was that afternoon, because I had to go back. And, this is drunk sick as hell. Now I'm able to do this without drinking because I was given a detox medication.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, how in the world were you even able to function from that point?
They gave me a detox medication to function. But again, with the disclaimer I said earlier, please, anytime you're coming off alcohol, have professional help.
Yes.
I'm serious when I say that. If you're shaking and you have all that, you need to detox professionally, because this was the wrong way to do it, especially for a guy like me. So yeah, I had this special medication, and I have like this traffic team I work with out of Chicago. And we have this message board, and everybody's on this message board. And I did my first hit, and I got a message from my boss and some other people that said, "You sound great, dude." And I was like, and that was the moment where I was like, I may still be here, I may still have my job intact. And then I came in the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day. It was just one day at a time.
So was that like your aha moment for you?
Yeah. Yeah, that was the time when I discovered that I really want to live a sober life, because there are a lot of people out here that, like my family and the people I work with, who are showing me this kind of love without me having the capacity to do that for other people.
Yeah.
And it feels it's that selfish nature that you got to give life a chance. I mean, and I guess anybody that would listen to this that might be addict or might be alcoholic, that really hate themselves, or if you know somebody like that, you don't know yourself. You don't know this person. It's until they get sober that you start to know them.
Right.
Because, I mean, as much as I drank, this constant cycle of drunkenness, it's no wonder I hated myself. Because you're waking up the next day, every single day, with either I did nothing last night except for drink, or I drank last night and I did a lot. And usually it's the second one that gets you into real trouble.
Yeah.
So it's either that one or the other, but that's not, with that you don't get the self-esteem you need, and the appropriate self-esteem, the self-love, that real confidence, not that boastfulness, that humility where it's everything's cool because I'm cool, and not because I'm unique or somebody better, but just you don't start developing those skills until you hit sobriety. And I kid you not, John, it's 3.5 years plus, and I'm still figuring this thing out. I mean, I started drinking at 16, and that's all I could think about until I was 42. So there are so many things, so many beautiful things you attain when you finally make that decision, when you finally say those beautiful words, I'm ready.
Yeah.
You know, there are so many things, and one of them is just maturity. Because when you start drinking, when you start becoming alcoholic or addict, you lose all that ability to learn, of self-learn, self-healing. All that goes away, all your maturity to develop as an adult. And then you recover and you sober up and you start to get a hang of this sobriety thing. You're like, holy shit, I don't know who I am.
It's like you're literally starting all over again.
Yeah.
Like you're starting life all over again.
It's so well said. That's exactly what it is.
What I want to ask is because, you and I have talked about like both our backgrounds with my drug and alcohol use. And I started at a very young age. I was 11 years old and got introduced to it. And I from there, I kind of hit the ground running and ran the gamut on everything. And then for me, it was trying to hide a traumatic experience that I had. And when I hit 18, that's when I really dove into basically a cocaine addiction for straight for 2 years. And it was the same kind of thing where I'd wake up, I do it all day, do it all night, it was pretty bad. But then out of nowhere, after the 2 years, I had my aha moment. It was only 2 years. So it's I slowly progressed, tried all the things, right? Then I went deep into an addiction. And then one day I was like, I'm done. And then I walked away. And so to me, so I'm like, what did I do different? Or how is my brain different than yours? Then yours progressed and kept going. And I decided to stop. And then I stopped everything for a really long time. Well, with drugs completely. And then alcohol. I didn't start drinking alcohol again until COVID. Because I was so bored. I didn't know what to do. I wouldn't even have a sip of alcohol for the longest time because then I got diagnosed with my immune disorder and I was having all these surgeries and having medications. So I didn't drink for the longest time. And then, you're bored in the house.
Yes,
and got nothing to do. And so then, they had those delivery things. And so I would get a bottle of wine delivered to me. And so now I'm just I'm able to enjoy alcohol, but I just always wonder why did I all of a sudden stop where I know I've had so many people in my life who couldn't do the same thing, or it just for some reason there was an off switch for me. But I think that I've been like that with like a lot of things in my life. So I don't know if it's like a personality trait, a character trait. I don't know what it is, but it's like whatever. If I just don't want to do something, I'll just stop. And then there's no like me going back to it or anything like that. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
No, it's a terrific question. I know there's something medical in it that I have read that there's an allergy that causes people when they have their first drink, they can't put it down. I know nothing about that other than what I just told you. I can speak from my experience, and really that's all. For me, I just couldn't. I had this predisposition, and all of this is on me, okay? I had this predisposition that I couldn't have fun without alcohol. I couldn't live without alcohol. And through my time of my heavy addiction, my drug use, it got its worst in my late 30s and mid 30s, and it started when I was 18. Through that whole time, it's always what I told myself, that this is how you are. This is just how you are. This is how you are, man. This is why people like you. This is your identity. This is your personality. This is, if you don't have this,
then no one's going to like you.
You're going to be boring as shit. And I'm not even talking about from a radio perspective or an entertainment thing. I wanted people to like me.
Yeah.
And that's how I got them to like me. What I didn't know is nobody liked me. Nobody wanted to be around me because I was such an obnoxious drunk. And it got to the point where even I had family members, the people that were closest to me, that were like, yeah, you might want to not do that anymore or say that anymore. And to me, that was just like, oh, it's working. To me, that's telling an alcoholic like me that, all that obnoxious behavior is working. So everything I heard, I could run through a filter and make it work for me, But yeah, it's a great question, John. Most importantly is you did.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool, is that you did it. And you didn't have to do everything I did. And that's, I think that's commendable. I think it's amazing that you're able to do that.
I think also with like, after, I had my bouts and I went to therapy for all of the things and did all that stuff to really deal with the core issues of what I was like trying to mask and all of that stuff. And then I got diagnosed with my immune disorder, and, my doctors basically had me addicted to a medication for years. It was a pain medication for over 12 years. And I should have checked myself in. I should have. I did not. And I detoxed myself on my own, which I highly do not ever recommend ever anything like that ever happening or have anybody wanting to do that at all. But I was to a point where I think I was just so mad at the doctors and like anything they try to prescribe me or try to send me to. They wanted to send me to pain management. And I was like, you guys are the ones who got me.
That's all pain management is. You get more of it. Yeah.
You're the ones who got me, addicted to diazepam. And now you want me to go to pain management? Okay, thanks. And so even just detoxing off of that was probably, I want to say that was probably the hardest 9 months of my life. Oh, I did it very, very slowly. There were times where I felt crazy. There were times where I literally said, okay, I need to go check myself in somewhere because I can't do this.
Was it, is that an opiate?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because when I would come off opiate, I loved opiates. Mm-hmm. That was another thing that I was, that's the.
Or it's Valium or what is it called? Right? I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't.
It's one of those classifications.
I thought I knew them all by now.
The light went off.
But do we need to pause?
No, it's fine. I'll keep it going.
Did you have like the feeling of like pain down your legs, like?
I had
getting bites and everything.
It was like it was obviously like the flu-like symptoms, but then also long-term wise, I felt like I was going crazy. Like it was more mental than anything.
Absolutely.
And like I felt like I was having like these weird brain zaps going through my brain and my body as I was trying to get off of it.
Was it just kind of like a whoosh, all of a sudden, like from your ear?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I got those too.
Yeah, and so to like work and then be a mom and still do all the things and still lose my mind in the process. I mean, that was the worst ever. Like, I don't wish that upon anybody. So I can't even imagine. And that was me taking the smallest amount because my body couldn't take very much of a benzo. That's what it is. It's a benzo. Okay. Couldn't take that much of a benzo. So I was on like the smallest amount you could take. And I was like, how in the world, if I could barely take that, I can't imagine people like using that and like keeping on or like adding more onto their bodies just because I was like, this small amount, because I used that small amount for 10 to 12 years, it has done all of this damage to me where I'm trying to like get off of it now.
Yeah.
And then you really feel the pain after that, because then afterwards I started to feel like all the pain that like the medicine was helping me with my immune disorder. So that was even that, then that was like the next phase of everything. So it's just the whole thing. I think regardless if you do it willingly or if you get in a position where you're prescribed something and then like you're using it, but you're not abusing it, but you still have to get off of it because it's not good for you long term, like either way, there's such bad repercussions towards it when you're trying to just get off your body to get not addicted to it. And I was just so mad because I was like, I cannot believe this. Like I put myself in the fitness industry because I wanted to be healthy again and I wanted to overcome my immune disorder and all these medications they were giving me. And my doctor I felt made me addicted to this medication that they were like, oh, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. You're taking this amount. It's not a big deal. And then all of a sudden, 12 years later, I get a call, oh, you need to stop taking that because people with your immune disorder are dying actually right now.
Fantastic.
So you need to come in right now. And I was like, what? What do you mean? So to go through all of that, I'm like, it's mind-boggling to me, just all of it.
Oh, it's brutal. It's just, think about it. You were actually in pain.
Yeah.
You were taking these medications. I was not in any pain, especially. I was not in any pain. And all the millions of people who went through that as well as you did, especially when they were really selling opiates and Oxycontin and hydrocodone, and you could get that easier than alcohol at some points. I mean, I was getting them written to me because I faked a wrist injury. And I was able to get a prescription without even an x-ray. I just said I had a wrist injury, and they wrote me a whole bunch of hydrocodone. And I did the whole thing. I walked in, I had a business textbook from college, so I looked studious and not like I was, addicted to drugs and everything. It was the craziest mindset. but think about it. I mean, you didn't ask for that. Mm-hmm. You didn't want to be high, but yet here you were.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't your choice. Mm-hmm. You have this condition that you fight through admirably, if I may say so. You do the thing. You have goals for your life. Here's an interruption. You're trying to fix it. Oh, wait, now you have a drug addiction.
Right.
How are we supposed to win?
Yeah, exactly.
How are we supposed to beat this stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have a chance if the people who aren't protecting us are protecting us, if they're not protecting us. Mm-hmm. Basically, you were trying to just do the right thing, and there are so many people trying to.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I originally left TV was because I got diagnosed, and I was in so much pain. I wasn't sleeping. The medication they were prescribing me so that I could feel better, I couldn't really take and do my job because it would make me loopy and out of it. Sure. And so when I would get to Channel 6, it's like 2:00 in the morning, you're doing the morning show. So I'm not able to have the full 8 hours of sleep in order to take the medication, relax, recover a little bit, go into work. So I would stop taking it or not take all of it. And then there was commercial breaks where I was dying. I was in pain. I was crying and then pretending, going back on TV hi, everything's fine. I'm good,
It's and so then hard.
It was horrible.
That's ridiculous.
And I loved what I did. But then I was like, I can't do this. I need to sleep. I need to take this medicine that they're telling me I have to take so I don't feel this way. And then having to swing the other way. So I feel like it's both sides are so crazy to think about and to hear about and to hear that there's just a vast majority when it comes to addiction. There's so much that goes into it. And in the other hand, in terms of the recovery, because now that I don't think about it, but, my body does. Oh, yeah. My body still remembers, I even just talked about, there was a podcast clip that I just posted that I was at the gym with my boyfriend and my bladder started spasming and I had to just stop working out because the pain was just so bad. And so that's how my body's oh, hi, I don't have my pain med right now. So you know what? I'm going to punch your bladder.
Crazy how it remembers and that's what it goes
I have to stop for a second and then kind of breathe through the spasming and then kind of, get back to life. So it's just so crazy how the drugs and alcohol can affect people in so many different ways, from like one end to the other.
It is, and it's again, and that's the thing about it. And as we talk about it, I mean, look at what you're doing right now, and all the things you've accomplished and you're accomplishing at the moment, like this show you do,
Yeah.
And just the small things in my life that are gradually getting better. I mean, we've said a lot of things about how tough it is, and I just want to emphasize how great it is when you finally do get into recovery. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's if you can make that step, if you can take that step, the hope is the rest of your life. Okay, and you're never too old. You're never too old to start again.
Yeah.
And that's the really cool thing. You know, the saying goes, "My best day drunk isn't as good as my worst day sober." You know, and I've said it 1,000 times. I've heard it 1,000 times, and it's true. It's true, and it's amazing. So, yeah, the recovery side is so gorgeous, and it's so rich, and it's an environment that anybody could be in.
Yeah.
The disease of addiction does not discriminate. It does not care if you're male, female. It doesn't care what your race is or
Right.
if you're rich or poor. It will find you if you're a candidate. And that's why recovery is so important. That's why we all stick together.
What is your recovery like now? Like, what do you do do you do something daily, weekly? Like, how do you keep yourself on the path that you want to keep going in?
I would say that a lot of it's a fixed routine with the understanding that fixed schedule can adjust. I say my prayers in the morning. I had a spiritual side my entire life until I entered recovery. The part of recovery, I am a 12-step principle. You know, there's very much a higher power, God of our understanding, and that's what I pray to. I have my people. After 3.5 years, you will make new friends. You will find recovery people that you can pour your heart out to, and I have a lot of those, and I'm blessed to have them. I have meetings that I do. And then I have a nightly routine that does involve some very remedial yoga, stretching. I don't hurt myself on the stretching.
Don't hurt your back.
No, don't hurt my back. Thank you. But that's just what mine looks like. There are thousands of recoveries. I've made a lot of 12-step references here, but I know people that there's a form of Buddhism that people use. I was turned on to energy healing last weekend, where I met with a really cool.
I told you about that.
It was so good.
I told you, it's amazing.
And I was just sitting there, and I said, "What do I do?" And the guy just starts doing things with his hands, and I was like, I just started talking to his wife, and we just sat there, and he's waving his hands and doing things, and
that's one of the forms of therapy that I
don't
continue
know,
to do. It's great.
It's fantastic. I don't know if it's placebo, but my hip felt better. I said to him, I don't know if I just want it to feel better, or if it's just hanging out with you guys. Now I feel amazing. I could run through a brick wall right now. And so there's that too. And there are so many different types of recovery. And I just encourage anybody to find it if you need it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Because I know sometimes like there's so many different parts of my life that it's taking me a very, very long time to openly talk about things, to the point where I'm not either like a hysterical mess, or I'm like not screaming, crying, or going into a panic attack. And I know it takes a lot for people to be open and to share their stories and to be like super transparent and vulnerable, especially with the position you are in, and, you know, being on the radio and having something day to day that people hear you over, you know. And so I thank you so much for sharing all of that. I love how you're using everything that you have done with your life to not only help people, but even like with the podcast that you guys are doing. And it's something that is like, it's a part of you because that's who you are, but you know, you're using it in a different way. And I love that. That's really great.
It all becomes your essence.
Yeah.
It becomes your human being as you find out what kind of human being you really are. And it's just having the opportunity and just the invitation, John, and I'm really humbled to be able to come in here, because you would have asked me 4 years ago, I would be like, no.
Yeah.
I was like, no, this doesn't happen to me. You know, and so this is really cool. And thanks for letting me talk about it a little
Yeah.
bit. I didn't get here by myself. I did nothing. People did it for me.
Yeah.
And those are the people that I thank.
I do want to ask before we end everything, like what would you give in terms of advice, like being like the person who's on the outside and somebody dealing with addiction and you're right there and you're trying to help, but you don't know what to do. And then obviously on the opposite side, someone who has walked in your shoes, such as yourself, like you want to get help, but you don't know what to do. Like how would both of those types of people help each other or move forward in this?
First thing you could do is you could try a 12-step meeting, depending on your addiction. You can go to a 12-step meeting. Listen, they don't care if you're high or boozing or whatever when you show up there.
So there's nothing for them to feel insecure, intimidated about.
No.
You can come in however you are.
No, and I'm the king of feeling insecure when I do something new. Mm-hmm. Everything is uncomfortable to me the first time I do it. So I was literally having a panic attack when I went to my first AA meeting that I would be judged and everything else. 12-step meetings are the one places you're not judged because everybody there, you think you're saying something unique and fantastically bad in these awful life experiences. And everybody's just like, yeah, I did that.
Like, so you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you won't.
I'm all right here.
It's like I'm home.
I'm home. I'm with family. Yeah, it's fine.
And you're totally with family. That's the cool. They become your family. They become your support, your right arm, and the people that pick you up, and the people that say, yeah, I know you're in the parking lot of a liquor store right now. You don't have to go in.
Yeah.
Those are the people that keep you from going back to the abyss. You can do that. You can always contact a rehabilitation center. And once you get on the phone, they will do everything they can to make this as easy as they can. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a lot of bad press about recovery centers out there right now. I've read some stories, especially around places here in Indiana.
Yeah.
Never my experience. I had a tough rehab once, but that was because of me. Mm-hmm. It wasn't because it was unsafe, dirty, or filthy, or anything like that. As a matter of fact, all the people that I presently keep company with it will say the same things about the rehabilitation. Don't let the rehab scare you off. Don't let the anticipated pain of detox scare you off because your first time might be really easy.
Yeah.
It was bad for me my last time because I'd been in it so many times. And as you say, Lily suggested earlier, it's a progressive disease. It gets worse and worse as you go. Mm-hmm. And that's what had happened to me. So don't be afraid to reach out to a rehabilitation center. Talk to somebody. Don't talk to, and this is a tough thing, especially if you're in use, because you don't want to do any of this, because you're not listening to anybody. But if you are in use, maybe say you're on the fence, maybe, you're just saying, I think I've been drinking too much. Talk to somebody who won't tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Find that person, engage them in your life, be honest with them. Let them give you the business a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that's your first step of humility. And that's the first step to say that I'm ready.
Yeah.
Let that humility be what leads you back to sobriety.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Tons of good information. I'll make sure, like I said, we'll have an email and a blog post that will come out with this podcast. So if you guys have any questions, you can check that out. I'll make sure to link your podcast so we can share it all. And then, thanks for being here. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Jonna.
All right. Well, thanks for watching. You can find all the details on this latest podcast and more online on my website at JonnetteCruz.com.